Hi, my name is Marissa Gonzalez, and I will be talking about the literacy and learning theories for my research paper. My research paper covers vocabulary acquisition, its relationship to comprehension, specifically in English language learners in the primary grades. The learning theory that I'm choosing to focus on that most relates to my research questions is automaticity, or commonly referred to as information processing theory. An automatic activity is one that we can perform effortlessly and with very little attention, so very little conscious effort. Readers who you see that are proficient, they can see a word in a text, they can recognize or decode that word with very minimal effort, and they can also assign meaning to that word. And this is done very quickly, and so the reader comprehends very easily what is happening in the text because they're not wasting a lot of energy trying to decode or figure out what a certain word means. So it is very automatic. David LaBerge and S.J. Samuels are the theorists behind the automaticity or information processing theory. They really pioneered the work to explore how automaticity impacts one's reading. Very early research of automaticity dealt with a lot of motor skills. And so LaBerge and Samuels in the mid-1970s, they really focused on automaticity specifically in reading and how it impacts all of the sub-processes such as comprehension. So as I mentioned before, reading requires a variety of sub-processes to take place simultaneously. So when one is reading a text, they are expected to decode and recognize words almost instantaneously without providing too much effort or wasting too much energy trying to decode. They should be able to construct meanings of full sentences and later on paragraphs once you get into complex texts, and also be able to make connections to the text based on a word's meaning. So vocabulary is a strong factor in automaticity. It's not enough to just be able to decode a word. Being a true reader really means being able to comprehend what the text is saying and the events that are happening in the story. So as you can see at the picture below, there's two students side by side. The student on the left is wasting a lot of energy trying to sound out words, trying to chunk the letters up, really trying to decode a very simple word, whereas the student on the left is able to instantaneously read that the word is table, and she even is able to picture it in her mind because she has prior knowledge and background of what that word means. So our theorists LaBerge and Samuels, they describe a fluent reader as one whose decoding process is automatic and requires no conscious attention. So the idea is that if a reader can decode almost immediately and determine a word or a sentence's meaning without wasting tons of energy, that leaves more of the reader's attention to be able to focus on comprehension and be able to track a series of events in a story. So what LaBerge and Samuels found when they observed young children was that less fluent readers, students that are just beginning to learn how to read, they need to allocate more resources to decoding while they're still working on sight words and being able to kind of have a toolbox of decoding strategies. Whereas students, as they move through their schooling and they build up their toolbox and their strategies and becoming more fluent readers, they have more resources available for comprehension of texts. So this is just another visual to kind of distinguish the difference between an early reader and a more skilled fluent reader. Early non-fluent readers, they have to attend to one skill at a time. They don't have the ability to both decode and comprehend simultaneously, whereas a more skilled fluent reader, more in the upper grades, that process of decoding and assigning meaning becomes one and it becomes automatic. So that reader has more energy and more attention to be able to focus on the comprehension aspect of the text, which is what we've established as truly reading, as being able to comprehend. So from this information, we can infer that we would not expect a young kindergarten or even first grade student who is just learning sight words, just learning how to decode words. We wouldn't expect their comprehension to be as strong as a student that were in upper grades, maybe third, fourth, and fifth grade, when those students are really reading for meaning. So now we're kind of moving into talking about the literacy processing theory by Marie M. Clay. This literacy theory emerges from our information processing or automaticity theory. Just a little bit about our theorist Marie Clay. She studied education for specifically primary grades at Arlington College of Education. She studied developmental and clinical child psychology later on in the United States. And then in the mid 1980s, around 1983, Marie developed a program for struggling readers to get them back on track, and we call this reading recovery. And again, it's an intervention program used to kind of target those struggling readers at a very young age so that their achievement gap would not widen as they went on through their schooling years. It was a very systematic way for instructors and educators to kind of hone in on our struggling readers and get them back on track. So she was responsible in the mid-80s for creating the Reading Recovery Intervention Program. So just some basic principles that the literacy processing theory is kind of founded upon. After Marie Clay went and observed and studied children throughout a school year, she found that literacy learning is a continuous process of change. Children use their surroundings, they use their prior knowledge in order to construct their own understandings when reading a text. On kind of that same note, not all children come to school with the same amount of literacy learning, whether that has to do with the kind of home they grew up in, where they grew up geographically, culturally, maybe that language barrier. So again, not all children come to school with that same amount of literacy learning. So it's really important that primary teachers kind of focus on students' strengths, find out what each student is good at, and teach in ways that are best for that individual student to really build and extend that knowledge. So Marie Clay stated that while reading and writing, a reader is able to draw from all of his or her current understandings and all of his or her language competencies and the phonological information that they have access to, as well as knowledge of print conventions. So she stated that there's no simplified way to engage in complex activities. So over and over again, we read and we see that reading is a very complex process. And so she kind of reiterated the fact that there really isn't a simplified way, but rather readers acquire skills of multitasking, drawing on prior knowledge in order to construct text meaning. So from this information, we can really infer that young readers have to build those skills early on so that eventually drawing on prior knowledge, multitasking will be much easier when they're reading more complex texts. They can decode, they can assign meaning, which is all multitasking, and it's automatic. So that really is the key to making that complex process of reading a little easier and a little more accessible by drawing on all of their current understandings, phonological information, language competencies. So it really is a continuous process of change as students move through their schooling years. So as I stated before, the literacy processing theory emerges from the learning theory of automaticity, of automatic information processing. So the literacy processing theory is based on the idea and some principles that literacy learning is a continuous process, and it has to start with a children's prior knowledge and can extend from there. So children are always drawing on knowledge that they already have and experiences that they already have, and it can extend and grow from there. So that thought process kind of emerges from the idea that students can automatically process information based on what's stored in their memory and their prior knowledge and experiences. So it has a lot to do with their working memory. So there are a variety of ways that classroom teachers and educators can promote this automaticity or information processing and literacy processing theories in the classroom. One of the great ways to promote these theories is through repeated readings, which promote automaticity. Students rereading books in their book boxes, that should look like a combination of independent and instructional level texts. Teachers can incorporate shared readings and writings into their daily literacy block. Rereading books in any subject area, cross-curricular, so really kind of focusing on including literature and reading in science and social studies, really exposes kids and gives them more opportunities to be exposed to texts. Rereading books in any subject area, it allows opportunity for student participation. After they've heard and read a book a couple of times, it builds their confidence. So they feel like a stronger reader and they're more likely to participate. Read alouds are a great way to promote these theories in this skill. So read alouds really help build vocabulary, especially for our EL students. Having them really listen to us read books out loud models how books should be read with fluency and with expression. So it really gives them that consistent daily model of listening to a skilled, experienced reader read, and then hopefully the idea is that they can build vocabulary through read alouds, and they can also hopefully use those fluency and expression skills in their own reading. So if schools do not have access to a trained reading recovery teacher, the idea and the goal is to just make sure that our struggling readers that get additional support as soon as possible. So using EIP teachers as a resource is a great way, giving students that one-on-one attention, which I know is very difficult for teachers, but providing that individualized instruction, a really good way to kind of push those struggling students further, and also instructing in small groups. Also, when listening to students read, teachers should make a very conscious effort to provide immediate and direct and corrective feedback. So that can be done in individual conferencing. So modeling for a student, letting that student try, and either praising or correcting their reading. This can also be done in small guided reading groups. So another classroom application that is really helpful and something that students love is partner reading. It's very helpful to be able to pair a native English speaker with an English learner. This helps promote vocabulary, and most likely that native English speaker will be able to model fluency and expression for that English learner. So it's great to have a teacher model, but it's also a good opportunity for peer interaction and let those partners read text together. Additionally, using recorders, tape recorders, so that students can listen to recorded readings. That's something that can be done by students independently during literacy centers and rotations. It allows students to be able to follow along with the text and once again hear that fluent, expressive reading while building vocabulary again, especially for our EL students. Utilizing a word wall. Not only does that help build vocabulary, it kind of transfers to reading and writing, being able to automatically recognize those words with very minimal effort. And writing personal stories. Marie Clay was very big about incorporating that into her literacy block. Again, that can be done in a variety of ways, whether it's in a literacy rotation, whether it's a shared writing that is done as a whole group, so that students can really be able to see how it's modeled and how it should be done. So as I mentioned before, tape recorders are a great technology tool in order to use in your literacy block. Those tape recorders can be used for listening to reading. So students can either record themselves reading a text. That allows them the opportunity to read a book as they would normally read it and then listen back. And a lot of times that gives students the opportunity for self-correction and self-monitoring, or teachers can choose to tape the books themselves in order to model fluent expressive reading. Additionally, another technology instrument that can be used during our literacy instruction is a document camera. So if teachers are doing shared readings over the course of a week or doing shared writings over the course of a week, that allows them to put that text up on the board so that everyone can be able to see, everyone can participate and follow along. So it's really the idea of like sharing the pen, letting students help you through the instruction. So the studies of these theories really provide confirmation of the struggles that EL students specifically face as far as acquiring vocabulary and being able to comprehend text. We see time and time again in the classroom and from studies that these theorists, along with others, have done in our readings from texts and outside articles. They all point to the fact that in order to be proficient readers, in order to successfully and quickly comprehend texts, you need to have that attention and that energy as a reader to be able to do so. So processes such as decoding and recognizing words, those need to become automatic so that readers have that energy left to focus on comprehension. So drawing on past experiences and prior knowledge, all of those things assist you, that we were talking about in the literacy processing theory. Those all assist with the automatic information processing learning theory, being able to do those with little conscious effort. So the following image is a list of references copied directly from my research paper. So all of these websites, articles, text readings, these are all sources where I retrieved information from not only this theory presentation, but also my research paper.